Everyone's on the Table, a podcast about board games, card games, and tabletop war games.
Hey, it's Chase from On the Table Gaming, and today for our episode, I'm joined by my friend Simon, and we're just gonna have a kind of a fun, casual chat and maybe reminisce about some of the good times, the bad times, the ugly times. We've been talking about A Song of Ice and Fire for a long time, and Simon, you're actually one of the people that was there, like from the get-go.
Yes, I was entirely too keen to get started right at the start. As soon as the Kickstarter was announced, set up a Facebook group and got involved. But Chase, I have to say, thank you for acknowledging our friendship for the first time. That's amazing.
Oh, well, you know what I mean? It's just, I'll cut that out. I'll edit it back here. No,
Okay,
what you're
that's
talking about. You're certainly, I think when I think of A Song of Ice and Fire, I have made some tremendous friendships. Going back, Mike Meeple for sure. A Song of Ice and Fire builder Mark, Greg Young from what used to be Rebel Lightworks, and he's since moved on and works now for Games Workshop. And you're people going back for since the past 5 years that I've had a chance to talk with. And I think that's one of the things that's really stuck with me about this game is that I've made some lifelong friends from it. And I think, I listed all those ones first, but I think you might be up there. I think we've had some good times. And yeah, I don't know. What a wild ride. Can you believe it's been 5 years?
Not really. No, I can't. It seems to be. See, just so people at home know, so I used to run the Facebook group for a number of years, and like with any hobby, you kind of get not burnt out, but priorities change in your life, and you think, maybe I don't really need to look at this every minute of my life. And so I was quite keen to do some other things, and so stepped away from that. I think it was about 18 months ago. And as a result of that, I kind of really haven't kept pace with the game. I kind of took a break. But, I see it come up a lot. And obviously with the new House of the Dragon TV show, it kind of reignites your interest in things. And now when I consider A Song of Ice and Fire, the miniatures game, it's more of being like a fan, and that's great for me because it actually feels quite exciting, rather than it being kind of similar to a job. It's more of a pastime now, so that does feel really good.
I think that's the trick, right? It's like, how do you keep it as a hobby and not have it kind of overtake other things, right? Because like you said, it's not a job, and I feel particularly sympathetic for you in that I think with the Facebook group as a mod, you get to deal with like the problems, right? When things are clipping along and things are going well, like there's some gentle touches there, but when things are, people are being problematic or harassing people or things like that, then you've got to step in. And sometimes it kind of, maybe that's, you got to deal with like the negative elements there.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing you never really want to do, though. It's you're exposed to the full spectrum of human emotion and scale in terms of the different people you interact with. And I think it's fair to say some people you probably wouldn't choose to interact with, and kind of the internet forces you into that, especially when you're a moderator.
Yeah.
So things happen, and you try and do your best. But at the end of the day, it's your time. You do it for free. You do it because you love it. You don't do it for any other reason.
Exactly.
I didn't start a Facebook group because I wanted to have, was it 10,000 people now? Realize that this was my group. It's a case of, no, this is in support of the excellent work that the guys at Simon do, and because people come together to enjoy a hobby. And I've moved on to do other things like that as well. But I think it's a really thankless task, being involved tangentially around hobby stuff. You do videos and tremendous amount of content, and it's always a real struggle. There's like a balancing act between, okay, how much time should I put into this? And then you put the time in and you get the recognition. It's always nice. Yeah, you're that guy. And you think, yeah, I am actually. I do this cool stuff. And, show my family. They go, oh, look how big your Facebook group is. But then it comes down to, a bit further on, you think to yourself, what's in it for me? And it's like, this is a lot of work. And I think everybody goes through that cycle. I think what you have to do if you're considering this type of thing is to keep it fresh and to pivot into new things. And since I've kind of stepped back from a sort of a public facing role in terms of running the Facebook group, I've done a bunch of other stuff, other hobbies as well. We talk about, so just so people at home know, me and Chase talk about little crap all the time, 3D printing, miniatures, card games, whatever it is. We just talk about, stuff we should be talking about when we're 13 years old.
Yeah, we weigh in on like cool hats, for example. But we're Renaissance men is what I'm trying to get at.
Well, exactly. Yeah, I think so. You've called me that before. I'd have to look it up. I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah, what I'm saying is you're someone who could have lived in the 1400s. I'm just putting it that way.
Thank you very much, sir. Yeah, okay, now I get it. So, but I think that it's I'm very excited about A Song of Ice and Fire. Whenever I look at the game, I think to myself, because I had some time off and I came back to it, and I looked at some of the new units and I'm like, what the hell's that? Where did that come
Yeah.
from? I've always wanted that. That's really cool. The one I said I ordered today was the Lannisport City Guard. I wish I had them 5 years ago. They're really cool looking models. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And what we're doing now is, I think within the game, is you're building kind of like thematic forces, like really deep theme stuff now. Before it's like, let's put these guys together because they're good within a certain faction.
Mm-hmm.
And now within each faction, you can build out on like 5 different directions and incorporate the characters the way that they should be used. I looked at the Lannister Heroes 3 box set, and the synergy between, I can't remember the guy's name, the evil maester guy, something Byrne, can't remember if Qyburn, that's right, yeah, Qyburn, and then Robert Strong, and the synergy between those two, and it's like, oh, that's pretty awesome. And then you look at how Tommen and Cersei work together and things like that. It's really cool stuff. So yeah, I'm kind of acquiring stuff. Never get around to painting anything though. And I think the play group that I was involved with are still going strong. They still play from time to time, but other things happen and they're into other games too now. So yeah, just need to re-engage really.
And it's kind of fun. I think it's important to like take a break and come back. It's a lot to stay up with, and you don't want to have maybe your hobby time take over your entire life. But I think it's also healthy to have like, maybe 2 games you play. That's actually been something that's helped things always stay fresh for me, is you can bounce between, 2 different games, and sometimes one ebbs and flows, and you've got another one that you can, pick up at those times. And then when you're kind of itching to get back, you get back to the other game. And
are you going to try and make me talk about Legion here?
You could jump in on that. I mean, that's the funny thing for me, is I think actually Legion for me is in a lull right now, and I'm feeling much more into A Song of Ice and Fire in this moment. We never did talk about like the Obi-Wan series and stuff like that, but some of the Star Wars properties have been like hit or miss, and right now with House of the Dragons, I think my Song of Ice and Fire stuff is like at an all-time like high fever pitch.
I must say I was impressed with the first episode. It felt really good. Obviously, it was a bit traumatic at times, but it certainly captured. Is everything I expected, and they did a good job at introducing the characters, even though the pacing was a little bit off. But there's the Rings of Power. Is it Ring of Power? Rings of Power? I'm not sure what they call it. That's coming out, I think, 2nd of September. That's going to boost a whole bunch of interest in that area of the hobby as well. So it's a good time to be in miniature wargaming. I think with COVID kind of ebbing and flowing a little bit, and people meeting up a lot more, it's certainly a good opportunity to get your miniatures on the table.
Oh, there we go. Have you, A Song of Ice and Fire, a great property, great miniatures. Have you looked at, Lord of the Rings miniature games? Is that something that's ever caught your fancy?
It did, yeah, a little while ago. So I was into it, not when it started, a little while after, because I wasn't really into miniatures then. I kind of got into it because I think I hit my 30s a long time ago. And I kind of thought, things I used to do as a kid, so there's a Games Workshop in the shopping mall. I went there and I thought, oh, these are cool. I've got a few miniatures, got a few paints, started collecting those. And I did actually start with the Middle-earth range of figures. And then I got into Warhammer 40,000 because everyone else was playing it.
Yep.
But I didn't enjoy playing it very much. And I didn't like the Space Marines because they were really boring. But I like the Lord of the Rings miniatures. And so I started not just playing, but just collecting them. And what happened is that after the Lord of the Rings finished, there was the Hobbit miniatures, but there's a big lull between the two.
Right.
And I just bought huge collections of Lord of the Rings miniatures at that time, just so I could get a full range of miniatures. And I've got so many duplicates and multiples of different characters now. I've got them all stored away somewhere. But now everyone's like, hey, this is the game that you really want to play. There's so much content around is it called Middle-earth Strategy Battle Game? I think it's called.
Yeah.
It's certainly becoming it's certainly a real renaissance. And I've dug out some of my figures. I'm looking to put together maybe a couple of forces like elves because they look cool, and probably some dwarves as well. So it's really cool. I wouldn't say, but I'm not very good at sticking at stuff. I start painting something, I never finish it, and then I buy something else, and kind of things get left. I really need more discipline when it comes to hobby.
Well, some of these games can be particularly hard for that when you've got to paint like a ton of miniatures. Like you got your rank and file games, and you've got 36 Free Folk Raiders to paint. Like that can be a little bit more monotonous. you ever thought about just trying to start like just nail down the characters, right? Just do like the Fellowship, and they'll look nice, and everyone else can be like gray plastic when you play.
Kind of like having your dessert before your main course, though.
That's true. You got to
If you
weave
deal
them
with
in.
the cool, yeah, you deal with the cool characters first. You think, okay, finish those, and you look over at 12 Lannister guards when you're thinking, no, I'm not going to bother with that. So, yeah, I think I just need to have a system, and it's a mental thing, being connected to it. I want to do this because there's an outcome. You have to work towards outcomes in hobbies. You have to have a goal, and if you don't, you're never really going to make some progress. But what I want to do is commit some of my time to forming a habit around doing it. One of my friends, he's a really lovely gent. I won't mention his name because he probably doesn't want to be named in person. But basically, what he does is every month he has a commitment to paint so many different figures, and he does all different types of figures, but the commitment's still there. And he's got a superb collection. Each month he posts what he's done, and it's really cool to see people making that kind of progress. And I think I want to probably work on my technique so I can work more quickly. I think that's the thing. You got to sort of be clever when you do this type of stuff. And I think that if you just go at it and without the right techniques and the right equipment, then you're probably not going to have a very good time.
Yeah. And it's also about like expectation management too, right? Where it's like, oh, I want this to be perfect, but sometimes you got to do what's in your skill level now and use it as a chance to grow. For me, I oftentimes be like, if I'm going to use it, I want it painted.
Yeah.
And I just enjoy the social experience so much of playing games that I'm like, well, I want to see everybody this Friday. I guess I'll paint it like now so that I can be ready to play and have us all out there. Otherwise, I can't bring that. That's been actually like embarrassingly so. The Heroes Box 3 for Free Folk, Jon Snow, I didn't paint up Jon Snow the Crow Come Over. It's a simple miniature. So I haven't been playing that. And I'm like, I really want to make some lists with him, but it's like, I got to paint him first. Otherwise, he won't get painted.
Do you feel embarrassed about not having
No, not at all. In fact, actually, a lot of people don't paint their miniatures for Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah.
But for me, it's just like if I make a rule, I'm good at following rules, and if I just make the rule, then that's what I got to do.
Okay, I guess it works for you.
Yeah.
I'm more of a free thinker when it comes to that kind of thing. I kind of think, oh, it'd be nice if I did that, but I never get around to it. And I don't want to look back on my many years of hobby and all this stuff I can tell my kids that I've been involved with, and they look at it and go, well, let's have a look then. And you go, okay, and you show them basically miniatures, brand new miniatures in a box. They're going to say, so what did you actually do for the last 20 years? So
I collect shelves.
Exactly. So basically, it's like having a store where you take all of the stock from the store, you store it at home at your own cost, and nobody ever buys it, and the price of it goes down over time. That's basically what I've done over the last 20 years.
Do you think that's a common, do you think there's a slice of miniature gamers that is like a slice of society that are people that like just want to collect and have, like, do you store boxes for stuff once you've like made and assembled them? Do you keep the box?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Just because at the back of my mind, it's like, you never know what's going to happen one day. It's like, well, what do I think is going to happen? Nothing has happened previously, which means that I needed the box, but I hold on to it. I don't know. It's this whole. Some people are just very attracted to the buyer behavior of going into a game store, making a purchase selection, feeling special about that, taking it home and opening it up and enjoying it and basically getting that dopamine rush. And then after that, sometimes there's not a lot more to it. You see a lot of deals for like miniature games on Facebook groups and eBay where people have obviously bought it, opened it up, didn't follow through on it, and then sold it. But luckily, with a lot of these games, they do hold their price fairly well. So it's not as if people are losing money hand over fist, but I'm certainly seeing eBay make a lot of money out of that kind of behavior. That's for sure.
See, I have such a hard time selling stuff, especially if I painted it. I've got a bunch of War Machine stuff, and I played Circle Ouroboros, and I thought they looked really cool. I got some big werewolves and stuff, and I painted them all up, and I think they were so much fun to paint. I added some, I started getting into doing a little bit of green stuff and putting like scars on them and things like that. And, am I really going to go back and play that game? Probably not. But I spent all the time on the miniatures. I don't want to just give them away or even maybe sell them, but they're just like sitting in bins. Like they're not even like out. Like I don't see them.
Yeah, all these broken promises to yourself. Can you buy? Say if somebody else had painted a collection of miniatures like as an army, could you actually go and buy it and think, cool, I've got my own painted army? I can't do that.
No,
No, I'm like, no, it's not gross, but it kind of feels like I didn't do it myself, so I don't really want it. So that's what I struggle with a little bit.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point because like even if I'm fielding an army that's like suboptimal or just like
Mm.
not well thought out, I'm just like, but I painted it. Like
Yeah.
I made this. This maybe sounds like really weird, but like I think I'm just like impressed that I'm even able to do this. I'm like, what? I was able to like assemble this thing and paint it and it looks crappy, but like I did that? Like that's crazy. Like how can I do that? That's amazing.
Let's face it, it's about 60% of our hobby time is watching other people doing what we should be doing.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, for me, it used to be like reading lore books. Like, I'd be like, oh, that's so cool. I think I know more about the history of like other game systems than I do about like actual real world history.
You try to talk to somebody else about it and say, actually, they go, yeah, I know, and I don't care. And it's like, okay, right. So that was a waste of time. I always find that sometimes the more you do this type of stuff, the more that lore and story kind of gets a little bit samey. You kind of think, all right, yeah, I get it. Yes, they had a sibling who they didn't get on with. No one understood them, and then it's that kind of like
Yeah.
story arc. These very cliched things you hear. But in wargaming, it's like these people are sworn enemies from the start of time,
Right.
and there's always a misunderstanding, not a big deal, but
Right.
it's sort of escalated
He's in
from
the
there.
book of grudges now. Okay,
Yeah,
can they
exactly.
resolve it? Can they sit down and talk it out? No, it's in the book.
They will forever be enemies, and it's just like ugh. But I'm waiting to see what happens with wargaming because I think it's a market ripe for disruption with like hybrid experiences. And when people talk about hybrid stuff, it's not always about like a digital app or something. It's different ways of playing, and I think that Song did a good job at sort of crossing that barrier between being a miniature war game with some board game elements, which actually gives it a lot more fun and structure. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that with other games which come out.
Yeah. I was wondering about that. Like, what's the future of Song? I know for Games Workshop properties are so big, they spawn like lots of other imitations or other ways to play with those miniatures. Right now, I know one page rules is like really big, and maybe we could talk about that in a little bit. But I was wondering for like, for a Song of Ice and Fire, the miniatures game, like it's grown quite a lot. Like there's a pretty big collection of miniatures out there that you can have.
Yeah.
And I always wondered, like, if we could go back and do it all again, if we went back like 5-6 years, I guess further than that, when they were designing the game, if it could like be recreated, like what would be another way to do this game besides the way they did it? Like right now it's kind of in like a skirmish format. What could have been other visions for this game, or maybe in the future?
Yeah, it's a tough one because obviously it's only as successful as it's been because of its heritage.
Mm-hmm.
And so any change you would have made would have changed that and probably, in most cases, been less successful. I think one thing you spoke about, though, was skirmish and making it a much bigger game. I think you can do that with the game. I've seen people play like huge games, but it doesn't seem like there's direct support for it. And I think that if I was running a business like CMOD, I think to myself, okay, people have bought say $300 worth of miniatures. I really want them to buy $500 worth. So how can I do that?
So that's exactly it. Because like I have so many extra free folk things now.
Yeah.
And the game is so tight at 40 points. But like I could play 100 points.
Yeah.
But I can't really without a significant effort, because the tactics board really doesn't scale well for that. And I saw some people do 2 tactics boards.
It's interesting because when you look at a game like this and the tactics board specifically, obviously that's a very tightly controlled sort of skill based, and you have to think through it, the synergy, the how it corresponds, different dimensions of the games. But if you have more stuff to control, that in itself is a strategic control point as well. That's a decision point you have to make. Rather than choosing from 5 units, you can commit to a flank or you can commit to a certain activity. These types of things happen when these larger games. And I don't know, I get the feeling that what I would really want in the future potentially is a game, well, Song is the game, but maybe even scaled down to, and we've talked about like 15mm miniatures in the past, things like that. But to have this kind of like epic scale that we kind of see, obviously not every battle for historians out there has always been, like these huge battles of like tens of thousands of people lining up to hit each other. Some of them are very asymmetrical, some of them are very small, but they seem large because they're important. But that kind of thing, to have the scale, I'm thinking that right now, Song on a 4x4, it could easily be a 6x4, and with that you could add in 4 or 5 other units as well. You could do that. You look at a game like Conquest, which I know we've spoken about, where you bring units in and like the second or third turn, like reinforcements. That kind of thing can happen as well. But I think that fundamentally, with a tray-based game, there are some restrictions. You can't have the movement itself, the placement, the positioning. That stuff is very challenging to actually sort of control. I think the current rules are probably almost to a degree faultless in that type of interaction, and that's something which would probably be more of a struggle if you had more and more different sort of units on a larger table. I think that would be challenging for people to manage.
Yeah, I think for me the biggest thing that I would look for was I would love to have it does have support for like team play,
Mm.
but I'd love to see like a variant that was put out by Simon that made it easier to do like 2v2 battles. Like, I don't know, if I could have like an any wish list thing, I might be like, what if there was like special like team tactics cards or something that was like a different thing entirely than what you normally played with. But that's asking a lot to bounce a whole nother game. But being able to pull a group of people together and be like, let's play this and have it, still work rather smoothly. That
I
would
think so.
be
We could
amazing.
team up. We could team up, Chase. You could be Theon to my Rob.
Oh,
So
wow. Oh, wow.
actually,
Wow.
no, sorry.
That's so nice of you.
I didn't mean
Wow.
Rob. I meant
Uh-huh.
I meant Ramsey.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's at least I get to be a person and not Reek or that's very kind of you.
That's no problem. Yeah, I think
You could be
t- t-
the
does
Lord of Bones to my Melisandre then. That's
but does team play actually work? Is it something that people want to do?
I don't know. But I feel like the thing is like we, in talking with guys like Shane from Boardman Gaming that come out these like really awesome thematic play experiences, and just thinking about like what are other ways to play the game. And for me, it's like all about the social experience, going there, talking with people, throwing some dice around, and being able to be like, hey, we have two people, hey, let's all play together for a game, and maybe is there a way to make like the amazing choice points there are in a single player game, make that work in a 2v2. And like you already can do that. I guess selfishly, like what I've seen that like Michael and Fabio have done with a game like Marvel Zombicide, where they've taken Zombicide, a game, Black Plague. I love Black Plague, but then they take that and they just made it so much better that I'm like, man, like I don't know if I can go back to Black Plague. Like they may have ruined it for me. And I'm like, well, if they can do that, we have there's a team way to play A Song of Ice and Fire, and people have also made like additional things where you do like double tactics boards or things like that. But I'm just like, just work your magic, guys, and make a thing that blows my mind away again for a team format. But maybe you're right. Are people not playing that? I don't know.
I think the majority of people wouldn't. But I can imagine people playing it if, for instance, you had, say, Rob Stark and Great John Umber, and people had those forces working together. And so basically, that's the kind of thing I could see work with that. But one thing I will be critical of is the fact that I don't think the game has explored the thematic side of the IP as much as it could have done.
Right.
I think there is tremendous depth there in terms of how those kind of things could be done. I think they touched on it at times, but it's a lot of work, and when you're trying to sell plastic miniatures, how much of that other stuff do you need to do, and how much can you lean on the community to do? I think my challenge is that I'm like a lot of other people. If it's not in the rule book, it is not official. I'm probably not going to touch it because it might be unbalanced or weird,
exactly.
or you're just basically fulfilling somebody else's gaming fantasy. They're going to completely crush you. Yeah,
it can be really fun. There's some amazing stuff out there, and it's not even like I'm okay with like a little bit of imbalance, but sometimes it just doesn't really work. It feels like clunky, and it's just so clearly like a tertiary thing.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. That's sort of on the wish list, but I guess you're right. Like I wonder how much people would play that. I think that's the challenge for Simon, right? With the Whispering Wood scenario, it came out. It was like a thematic battle, really cool. And I think I played it twice. 3 times maybe max, and like think of how many times you played the other scenarios, and I was like, oh yeah, I kind of like did it and checked it off. You don't get as much mileage from it per se.
Yeah, it's all very well asking for this stuff, but no one's actually using it. Then why put effort into it? Yeah, that's very common with these types of things.
So but it's easy to ask. So
yeah, we want all this cool stuff, and we'll elect if we're going to use it or not. But you still have to put the work in. Yeah,
right,
that
more.
Yeah. Now, I would prefer they continue doing what they're doing. The only issue that I have is this becomes somewhat. I think they've done a very, very good job at keeping things fresh and different, and I think that the commander boxes they do, the heroes boxes, are the best value in probably any gaming system that you can get. It unlocks 2, maybe 3 commanders, different attachments. The synergy within that is absolutely incredible. And I think that's what's really cool. If I'm looking at doing anything with my army, I would always pick up one of those hero boxes for sure. I think unit selection is always like, well, let me read the reviews here. I'll buy one
Right.
because I like the miniatures. Am I going to buy two? Probably not anymore. I used to buy like two crossbowmen and stuff like that because they work well together. But now I'm being a bit more selective. But in my army, what I really want is I want to have more different units. I don't want to have like 3 guardsman units. I want to
Right.
have a whole variety of cool things. So when you look at them, they look great. That's all. And I really want new pyromancer models as well because I don't like the existing ones
Oh.
very much. And I really want them to, because I want to play like a Tywin list with I think Robert Strong goes in the pyromancers, and basically it makes them like really nasty and also quite defensive as well. Those are the cool things that I want, and hopefully they'll get to that, in time. I would love for them to do sort of pre-assembled models, but with some options. So you can do like things like change the arms around and have different poses and stuff. I think we got to that level of maturity of the game that I'd want to customize some units and not just have like 3 or 4 different looking sort of soldiers. I really want to have a bit of variety there. Those are the kind of things that they could do.
Would you buy another unit of Lannister Pyromancers if they came out with a new box with new sculpts?
Yes,
Do
definitely.
you think that's maybe not a viable method though for doing anything like this, right? Because they'd have to retire like all those old units. Like no one would want to buy the old ones then.
Yeah, I think to a degree. I think it's obviously with the inventory management, it's quite important. But if you look at the number of people who own that unit and then consider how many people buy new units anyway, you look at how the player base has expanded, there might be a case to say, actually, yeah, if we did them differently, maybe with a different attachment, or they worked, or the models are very dynamic. I always see the pyromancers as being like the people plus the stuff, what they call the green fire stuff. Can't remember
The
what they call it.
wildfire, yeah.
Yeah, the wildfire, but having like a big cauldron of that on the base as well,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. And that's what people buy. A lot of people buy miniatures because they like the way the miniatures look. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I'm sure that not many people have got more than one unit of them. So maybe there is a case for that. I'd like to see something like that. But then again, I want to see the hill tribes.
Yep.
I like Lannister and Night's Watch, so I want to see those kind of things as well. And I'm sure you've got things that you want to see for the free folk still.
Oh my gosh. I keep joking about it. There's one line in the book where Varamir Sixskins is talking about all the other skin changers, and we've got Barak with the bear now, with the boar now, but Grisella with the battle goat. I'm just like, I want a skin changer with a battle goat. Like, you know what I mean? Heck, she could be riding, or like, it could be whatever, put it with the bears. I don't know, but a battle goat would be just strange enough to add to my like zoo menagerie that I would definitely want that.
Yeah. One thing I've always been very impressed with the song community and all of the content creators is how passionate people are about the game. I think the Middle Earth group, there's some fantastic folks who do stuff there as well, but song is very similar. The way that people are very passionate about it, that there's very raw emotion sometimes when things aren't the way that people want them to be, but also a tremendous amount of support for different people. So I think that's really cool when you see things like that. It's a positive and a negative sometimes, but overall I think that people care, and that's a good thing. If people stop caring, then these games aren't viable, but people really care about A Song of Ice and Fire still.
Yeah, the thing that I just love about this game that is I know like, down the line, games aren't forever.
Yeah.
But this is a game that I know I could pull out in 15 years and the rules are simple enough that I could heck even teach somebody and slide trays around and still have a good time. It's not like, do you have any of those like Twilight Imperium, like bigger games where you're like, sweet, this is so awesome, but I'm never going to be able to play this. If I had to teach somebody, if I wait and, want to play a game, I really need to have like a dedicated crew ready to go.
Yeah,
And
I can see you bullying grandkids into this
yeah,
type of stuff.
exactly. Wow,
Yeah.
exactly. Come on. I'd be like, it was a thing. That series went for 10 years. The book's longer. And like,
I used to do a radio show about this.
yeah. Or is this just me trying to like talk myself into my sizable investment here where I'm like, I'm going to get value out of this. I swear. Like, this is forever. It's an investment.
The fact you call it an investment makes me cringe. So people talk about investments, and it's like, is that the best investment you've made? Because I'm
I
worried.
don't think I didn't say I made a good investment, but I've invested some time and money into this hobby.
Emotional investment, I think.
Exactly. Yeah.
When people talking about the monetary side of it, I'm thinking it's.
Oh no, there's no monetary, there's no dividends on that. This is all emotional, payout.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think it's cool. If nothing else ever happened with the game, I'd still play it. I think
Yeah.
there's so much there that I haven't explored so far. And how many factions? There's like 9 factions
Yeah,
now.
9 factions.
I heard on your podcast, this podcast previously, that Michael promised there'd be a 10th as well.
Well, oh yeah, exactly. I mean, you heard him. He said the number 10, so
He made a
I
firm
think we're ready to
commitment. So
go. Yeah.
yeah, I'm just wondering when. What's the delay? Let's get this out here
Yeah,
now.
and I think it's going to be with the mounted Tywin, so that's going to be great.
That's one of the miniatures I've always wanted. So
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
fantastic.
We were promised.
Is there a patch phase miniature yet?
There is not.
Ah, see, that's what I
So
want.
there's
Yeah.
some big ones still to come, I think, right? There's a
Okay.
lot of like every time I'm like, wow, we've done so much. And then it's like, oh yeah, there are actually a lot of characters still that there's room to explore. So
The books aren't even done yet, you know?
that's true. I mean, imagine, I've been saying this for the last 5 years that we've been covering the game, but when the next book drops,
Mm.
who knows what other new characters may be introduced? Like people think he might be starting to wind things up. I think we might see a lot of new characters put in there.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Let's face it, though. Everybody in the world wants a Daemon Targaryen miniature right now.
Yeah,
They
that's
want
true.
that dragon armor on a horse. Everybody wants that miniature right now because that was in the show. He looked absolutely incredible. Matt Smith did a fantastic job. He was really electric as that character. Really brought it to life, and that's really cool things you see in this whole IP. You know, people knock the endings of the Game of Thrones on the TV shows, stuff like that, and it was a bit of a farce, really. It was, kind of sped up, slowed down, and just weird. Nothing was impactful, and it was rushed. But I think that I'm hoping that House of the Dragon does allow people to see that there's a bit more subtlety and nuance within this. And who knows? Maybe one day there's an opportunity for them to rectify some of what happened and maybe go in a different direction. I could see pretty much all of the cast saying, you know what, if there's a book made and it went in a different direction, maybe we could come back and do things according to the book. I think that HBO probably holds that in their back pocket for a later day and reserve the option to do stuff.
Release the Martin cut, that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Let's face
I
it.
mean,
A lot of
that
those
would
actors.
generate a lot of buzz. Are you kidding me?
Oh, it would be. Yeah, it'd be like because they do that with like superhero stuff now. Where they
Yeah,
have
yeah. I mean, you
different.
couldn't miss it if they were like, "Hey, we're gonna do a different ending, or we're doing a different season ending." Like, if you watch Game of Thrones, like even if you hated it, I mean, especially if you hated it, like you're not gonna miss that.
Imagine if people hated it more. It'd be hilarious.
I think some people just like to hate.
Yeah, exactly.
But man, I don't know. Even the costumes and the settings. It was really fun with House of the Dragon to see just the settings again. It's like, wow, like this is a cool world. I think at the very least, like I know some people I've talked to have been a little upset and like, these books got to get finished because, X, Y, Z. I want to know how it ends. But I'm kind of just like, he just created this like amazing open world. It's like a role-playing setting almost. Like you're just like, it's just cool that it exists as a concept.
The guy can't win because let's face it. How many other people in the world ever have written a book which is so highly regarded at the scale that he has managed to achieve? Created probably one of the most fantastical fantasy universes in the last 30 years, which is prominently number 1 or number 2 most highly regarded. And he's struggling to write a book? Yeah, I'd struggle. I struggle with that. And let's face it, he's gone back and he's an executive producer for the TV show, which I think he kind of needed to do to right some of those wrongs. He didn't like the fact that things had been left the way it was. And, it's all very well him writing the next book and everyone turning around and saying, oh, well, guess what? Your TV show was shit. It's like, well, I can't win. What can I do? So I think that he's done the right thing. But it's taken him 11 years to write a book. I would never be able to write a book with so many loose ends and, he, painted himself into a corner. No one complained when they were reading the last book that this is too complicated now. People loved it. So, it's you can't win with this type of stuff. And hopefully there will be another finished book. I don't think it's going to write 2 more. But I also think that sometimes the best tales are the ones that don't finish. The ones where you can leave open to imagination. It's a shame with Lord of the Rings that it's very tightly prescribed at the end. I'd rather it be more open to people's interpretation, and then people can, imagine around that. I struggle with the Ring of Power TV show, the way that they've taken on this sort of guidance from the books, it's fair to say, and kind of built into that and sort of use some characters and sort of you want to know what's right and what's made up. And I think a lot of people who are fans can't enjoy an experience where it's been co-opted into other material. And I think that's the challenge that Ring of Power is going to have when people look at that. I think it's solvable, and I think if it's good enough, people will love it. But I think with House of the Dragon, it's written the right way because it's written like a script. where people can interpret it, they can add to it, but it follows a narrative. And that narrative we know is actually going to work really well.
And you get the big bullet points of the things you're going to hit, the big beats as you're going through.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess for me, part of my kind of growth with these IPs has really been informed by, my personal feelings about like Star Wars. The original trilogy, especially as a kid, the messages in there, I really like identified with Luke on these ideas of like hope and like never giving up and there's good in everybody, etc. And, they were really impactful to me. And then the prequels came out and they were not my favorite thing. And then, a lot of the Star Wars shows now, like I watch every single Star Wars things that come out, but I guess I'm not super in love with it all. And I'm like, wow, what happens when there's like, 20 of these things and I like, 5 of them or something. And I'm like, I guess I got to recognize that Star Wars is now like its own genre of, media. And there are stories told within Star Wars that I like, and there are stories that I don't. And the fact that this, trying to be one cohesive thread and everything tied together, like, I got to recognize that, some of that stuff's not going to be for me and not interest me. And I think for Lord of the Rings, it's sort of similar where I'm like, it's its own, world that they're going to play in. And I'm hoping the series will be good. And if it's not, the original trilogy were, really amazing. And I just have to, kind of maybe make a little more peace with that. So that's kind of been my own growth of these things.
I think that people are going to be bigger fans of The Hobbit than they were before. I think that's inevitable. People say, "Oh, The Hobbit was great." It's like, well, hang on, nobody said that 5 years ago. Where did that come from?
Right.
But I think you're right. I think it's about increasing the scale. The more of something there is, the less special it is. And I think, growing up a Star Wars, if there was only ever those 3 Star Wars movies, it would be amazing. But people wanted more, and you're never going to recapture that.
Boba Fett, well, I heard he got out of the pit. Like, I don't think so. I think he's dead in there. And there's like extended universe stuff for saying this, and it's like,
what a bummer having all of that kind of stuff as a kid ruined by a TV show, which was kind of half what you wanted it to be. And now it's official. You kind of think, well, okay, don't have to dream about that anymore. Like everyone was coming up with some cool stories. Who was that? Is it Patton Oswalt did that thing about Boba Fett on Parks and Recreation? He did this filibuster sketch.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, where he was like discussing it. It's very similar to what happened, but that's really what everybody wanted to happen to Boba Fett. But it was the tragedy of Boba Fett, which was the thing about it, was the fact that there could have been something. Maybe there could be. And as soon as it becomes official, it just kind of shatters the mirror. You kind of think to yourself, that's not so cool.
This comes up a lot in my life, and I've mentioned it before, but there's a great George R. R. Martin short story, With Morning Comes Mistfall, that kind of wrestles with those themes of like the magic and the mystery and like the wonder and then the knowing. And I feel so much of like even a wargaming, it's like, oh, the wonder of like getting this next thing and like what's it gonna do, and like, oh my gosh, wow. And then things getting like kind of teased out. I think for me, my favorite time during all of A Song of Ice and Fire was when Michael used to be able to drop information in the Facebook group and just be like, we'll tease one thing out. And then another week. And, it's kind of a slow drip. Part of the fun of the game is not only playing it, but kind of in the community, is the wonder and the speculation and the, how will this change things? And, oh my gosh, it came with an extra tactic zone. Like, what? And then, getting to play it.
Can we just take a moment for everybody to acknowledge how well you steered that back from us talking about TV shows to talking about the game? I really admire you, Chase, because that was masterfully done.
Oh, he's onto me. He's onto me.
You put this back into context. It wasn't just like 2 dudes rambling on about TV shows. It had a bit more structure, but
we get there. I like to keep it a little bit loose on here, though, and just talk and see where it goes.
So with the Martells, there's another tactics boards area. Is that right?
Yes, that is true. The Water Gardens.
There was one with the Targaryens as well.
Yep, that's the House of the Undying.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I remember that. Okay, that's cool.
So you can actually you could potentially have a game where there's 7 zones that you're competing over on the tactics board.
I like the sound of that. That sounds kind of fun.
It's kind of new and kind of an interesting thing. And so the cool thing is that that actually maybe opens up for like more NCU play. You could feasibly bring like, I don't know, 4 NCs if you wanted to, but then you're really competing, like you're really, skimping on your combat units. You got to be really, deliberate in what you're using there. And I wonder how that'll shift things up. Going back when the game first came out, initially there was a lot of people running quite a bit of like spam, like running a lot of certain units and trying to get like huge activation advantage. And that was kind of like the very first, before Night's Watch. And then I think that's how Don Shelkey had a lot of success, is that he started playing kind of lower activation, like elite units, and then using characters like Tyrion to like get extra activations on them and just try and like nuke other units off the board really early. So, these kind of things ebb and flow. So, I'm assuming this will push us into another era where people are experimenting with these things, and maybe we'll see some more hyper elite. Maybe we'll change the way interactions with activations happen. Maybe not.
So when people play today then, because again, I'm slightly disconnected here, are people still not playing that many NCUs? Are people normally taking like 1 or 2 or something? What's happening?
I still think mostly people take 3, but I think, you can definitely run 2. And I think we were just talking with Luke Hartman, who won the US National Championship, and he had a 2 NCU list and a 3 NCU list. And he's saying, hey, as Starks, I will run, if I'm going to run 2 NCUs, I really got to bring Peter Baelish, because he lets me deny my opponent a zone while getting a zone for himself, like getting an effect he wants. And so that, you've got to really play some way to mess with your opponent's plans, right? So there are, viable ways to work around it. I don't think it's like a solved problem, but I definitely think some people have preferences. But it's cool to see, how, does adding an extra tactic zone mix that up? How does that change it? Or with characters now that can like put a strangler token on a zone where if you claim it, twice, you get a token, your character dies. Like, you can start to kind of mix with the formula a little bit.
Is that what they're doing with House Martell then?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's a lot obviously to explore. For me, I've never really been like hyper competitive. I enjoy the fun of just meeting up with people and playing, and I get that people want things where they can show their skill and they can be competitive because it makes people feel good, and that's why people play games a lot of the time.
Right.
But it doesn't really appeal to me. And managing the Facebook group, I noticed that a lot of people weren't kind of like lifestyle miniature gamers. They were people who liked the game because they liked the books and just wanted to have fun with friends. And I think that the game does a pretty good job at incorporating both of those different persona into the fan base for sure. There is an area of the competitive element for sure. But for me, I'm always happiest when I'm playing with my good friends. We're laughing and joking about stuff, talking about the units, and surprising one another with different plays and stuff. That's fun, and that's how I like to spend my time. So hopefully the game continues to support both of those things moving forward.
Yeah, and I think it's still in that. I think that's the one thing that's clearly evident, is that because the game is so board gamer friendly, and you can draw on people that have card game experience, and it's got the tactics cards, people that are more used to the board games with like simple token play, it isn't that big of a jump into. And the fact that the minis are pre-assembled, I know it maybe, we want to have some room for variation, but, we got a family that picked up 2 sets of the Star Wars Legion Clone Wars boxes, and they're kind of new to the hobby. Their kid wanted to play.
They fell out because of them when they've tried to get those, is it the clone troops? Not the clone troops.
Yeah, no, the clone troopers are the wonderful ones. You just plug and push and play. And
right, the other ones.
Then they get to the B1 battle droids, and, they got their 10-year-old kid they wanted to play with. And, it's a little bit out of their initial hobby skill level, and that can be like a huge turnoff. That's honestly one of the reasons why I'm a little bit like hot and cold on Marvel Crisis Protocol, is because I bought some of their miniatures and they were great. Some of them have like huge gaps I had to fill, and then the skill range on certain miniatures, you get like a Shuri and from Wakanda, and you're trying to assemble it, and it was like a nightmare. And I was like, I'm actually kind of struggling, and I've assembled plenty of miniatures, and I was like, it's weird to have in a miniature range some that are so easy and then some that are so difficult, and it's not like marked on the box anyway, like more advanced or something.
Yeah.
And you solve a lot of those problems with a game like this. You don't have to paint your miniatures. If you just want to place the game, you pull out of your tray, like pull out of a drawer and just put on the table. Like, yeah, go for it.
I have been in a store before, bought a set of miniatures and got them on the table straight away.
Yeah.
That has happened. That's something that's like, cool, okay, I've done this and got the cards right there. Everything's ready to roll. So, question for you then. If someone was coming back into the hobby and they've been away for a bit, how would they get back into Song? What's the best way that people could actually, because I've seen the new, I think there's a Lannister and a Stark starter set. I bought the Lannister one because the miniatures look really good. What does that get you, and what do you actually need to do to sort of get back into things?
So I think the biggest thing is you got to look at the value of, how much are you trying to save some money here? The Stark versus Lannister starter set gives you a lot. And the best part is that in some places you can find those original starter sets like significantly discounted. But the problem is I just think the sculpts in the new starter sets are just miles beyond. So if you're like someone that really cares about the look and feel of the miniatures as well, you know, you just kind of want to get a newer starter set. And they come with the 2021 update cards. For the Lannisters and the Starks, there's maybe been 4 or 5 cards that have changed, which is difficult. I think that's always kind of a bummer to hear when someone's like, I just got the new set. It's got all the updated cards. And you're like, yeah, but you got to change these 3.
Okay.
But I think you jump in one of those. And like you said, you buy a starter set, you buy a Heroes box, and then you honestly just pick a cool unit. You got a full army there.
So how long did you keep going buying every single unit? Because I think we both did that at the start.
Yeah.
And we ran out of I think you got into the free folk and you're like, no, I'm set.
Yeah, basically that. I mean, I picked up the starter sets. I went a little bit overboard on Greyjoy.
Yeah.
But, you know, this last year, it's been a little hard at times to get stuff. That was a challenge for me.
Okay.
But I really kept going heavy on the free folk. And then I just pick up a few units that I think are cool. But, you know, I didn't get the Lannister City Watch. I haven't got the Lannister Hero box. You know, this year, I think there was 20 boxes that were releasing that was announced at Gamma.
Jeez.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
you know, people, I know there's been different, you know, they've been arriving at different times or certain places, but, you know, people being like, you know, do they even care about this game anymore? And it's like, dude, I think, you know, Star Wars Legion has like slowed down to a very like, you know, every quarter you get like a unit box and like sometimes they'll miss your faction and you're like, oh,
yeah,
guess I'm waiting to the second half of the year. Like, this is it's going pretty strong.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, I collected everything up until Greyjoys. So I bought a lot of boxes of stuff which frankly is still pristine in the box. I think that when the Baratheons came out, it made me realize how much I enjoyed the Lannisters. And I'm going to say that the Baratheons weren't quite as much to my liking as the what we'd seen previously. I think what happened is they recovered with the Greyjoys, but for me, the Baratheon models aren't necessarily my favorite ones, and I can't put my finger on it because they are great models. But I think it's because of the familiarity with the Lannisters are very present in the books, very present in the TV show. They get predominantly most of the screen time on the TV show, and so you actually know what the Gold Cloaks do, what the City Watch does, all these different types of things. So it's very easy to make that sort of mental link. But Baratheons, it's challenging, you know. I also, one thing, I didn't like the fact they all had hammers. For silhouette purposes and for recognition, I get it. But I converted some of mine and gave them swords from like a half of a Stark box set that I had, and I cut the swords off and I put them on there, and they look pretty good. But I wish there's a bit more variation for the Baratheons. And also, it might seem silly, but them just being that yellow plastic, for some reason, I didn't value them the same way as I did.
That's so funny that you say that, because I definitely think some of the miniatures just look better in certain colors. Like when you prime them, they look great, but like the yellow is a weird color. I have bad news for you, though. I know you're jumping back in and you got the new Lannister starter set with the beautiful sculpts. You're picking up units for them. You may really enjoy playing the Martells. And that might be something you just keep an eye out on with that sort of political play and the more cunning style of battle. So
I think I've got Lannisters and Night's Watch. So I've got my kind of like lush green fields and snowy vistas, and then obviously with the Martells, it's going to be like sandy kind of bases and stuff like that. You could do that a bit with the Targaryens, but it's more of like a sort of a desert type of thing with some of the miniatures that I've seen. But one thing I was doing the other day is that someone said, you can get these models in Canada. I'm like, really? So I basically went on Google and went through so many miniature stores trying to find them, like going beyond just a regular Google search to see if I could get that starter set, and I couldn't get it anywhere. So I know that some people already have it in hand, and I'm super jealous because it does look pretty amazing. I love the unit models look absolutely beautiful. I think, is it the what are the two that, or the three that come in the box set?
So you've got your the dervishes, with the short blades that look really cool. You've got your sand skirmishers, which I really like. That have like the cloaks and the bows. And then you got your spearmen. And the spearmen, as far as the sculpts, they might be not as quite dynamic as the others. I think what I'm really looking for in miniatures these days is I guess I'm just always going back to the Lannister halberdiers. I really like when the units are in that sort of formation. And I know it's like not quite as dynamic. Like they don't look as good individually, but I think on the tray, that's what really stands out to me. And I hope maybe someday to have maybe the, Unsullied pikemen and some of the other spear units like that come out in a format that is a little bit more combat posed. Oh, that's what the Sunspear Royal Guard have. They look awesome like that. They're going to rank up on the tray and look like they're in like almost more of a phalanx sort of formation. And it's just like, yeah, like do more of that. Like they're stuck on the trays. Like make the tray look cool. Like think about it big picture.
Yeah.
So
no, I agree. You know, you look at I remember Nice Watch. So basically you had the veterans who were like very stoic and just like stood there with their swords.
Oh yeah.
And then you had the Swan swords, and they're like swords in impossible angles over their heads, you know, like jumping every way. Some of them are really, really animated and go absolutely crazy, and some of them are just like pretty chill.
Which do you prefer?
I'm kind of a happy medium. I like a little bit of dynamism, but I don't want people sort of like jumping off rocks the whole time and like doing backflips and stuff. Actually, we haven't seen a model do a backflip yet. I'm sure that's coming, but you know, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I like the fact that it's not the actual fighting they're doing. It's just like the assembling to fight, if you see what I mean. So they got the battle pose rather than the murder pose.
Okay. I think the only miniatures that really, you know, sometimes I'm like, oh, I wish for them. A lot of times on like creatures, you'll have, if there's multiple of them, you'll have like multiple poses, and there'll be like one where it's standing still or one that's like in motion. Yeah. Especially for like elephants or things like that. Like I really prefer the like in motion, but I think when they're not in motion, it's fine. You just put a little dude next to it. It's like the handlers with them. But I love the more dynamic look.
You know, this is an opportunity for 3D printing to put stuff on the bases, to give them a little bit of extra kind of things going on there as well. Bit of variation. That's how I've got a 3D printer, and that's really what I don't print miniatures that much, because how many more miniatures do I really need? And you know, it's like I'm not really heavily invested in something. We'll talk about this one-page rules thing in a minute, but you know, I like to do things which support the games that I already have. Like if it's like cool terrain, I want to print that out. If it's like things you can put on bases or something like that, that's cool, you know. But I'm not going to print a whole bunch of like miniatures and make a new game around that. I don't have enough time. So I think 3D printing is really where people want to make that sort of distinction. I think with things like mammoths, however, you know, it's not as if you can have many mammoths doing different types of things. They're pretty much like animals moving in one direction. They're going to look pretty similar.
Do a backflip. That's all I'm asking.
You at least want one on 2 feet trying to trample something down. That's what you want.
There's some hero out there that put a giant on the back of one of them, and I was like, that's cool.
That's Battle what people want to see. Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's hit this one-page rules thing. This is something that there's a huge amount of buzz on, talking about 3D printing. Have you had a chance to like really dig through that yet?
A little bit. It's interesting because I like the models. I saw them, and I think most people who got 3D printers probably go on like Patreon or something and type 3D models, and they see, oh, that's cool, I'll join that. And they get the STLs, but they print a couple of miniatures, never go much further with it. But from what I'm seeing, One Page Rules has kind of got that hybrid, which has been missing, of having, I think, fairly good miniatures. I wouldn't say they were top tier. I think they're pretty good. And, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that a lot of people really like what they're doing. But the secret is that it's the hybrid. The rules, very simple to learn, but they can be used with the 3D printer models, but also your existing collection as well. And this is where we're going to see disruption in the industry. This is what people... They've got 10,000 Patreons right now, I believe, which is quite a large number for that type of project, and they're growing pretty quickly. I think we're going to start seeing probably maybe next year some companies... Actually, there was one company that did it. The guys that did the Fallout game and Elder Scrolls, they've got STLs. They support that type of stuff.
Oh, really? I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, not for like the core miniatures, but for some other stuff that you can buy STLs for them. You can get like for Fallout, I think you can get like the truck stop thing with the big rocket at the front and stuff like that. You can print it yourself. And for the Elder Scrolls game, they've got if you played the game, you get down to like where the first dragon is after it's invaded that village. He's on like a tower, and you can get that tower, which is quite iconic in the game. You can 3D print that as well. So I think we're going to see more of that type of stuff.
For me, I was looking at the rules. First off, I was disappointed when I opened the rule books, and they were 16 pages long. Yeah. I was like, what? This is 1 page rule? But 16 pages, that's a short rule set. And it really hits, it kind of has a reminiscent feeling of like, you know, older 40K, at least the Grimdark Future game they had.
Right.
But, you know, the other thing is like the rules are quick, they're easy, miniature agnostic, so you can bring in, you know, your miniatures of choice. You could play a Song of Ice and Fire miniatures with this in, you know, their Age of Fantasy skirmish game, for example. But what stood out to me was that it's like if fans are making the game, you know, and they have for the sci-fi setting, they have miniatures you can get to print. They have the Star Host like Sauron, like gecko creatures, and it's
Saw
basically
them.
like
Yep.
lizard men
Yep.
in space, and they got like rocket packs and like pistols. Wow, that is just so cool. And like, how do we not have this in other game systems yet? This is just it's like an ode to like your love of this, this game.
I don't
That
understand what happened with Warhammer 40,000. It's like Warhammer 40,000 got merged with Disney at some point, and they've come up with this thing which is very unsatisfying for both kind of people. The people who want sort of like the space fantasy stuff and people who want the grimdark space approach. It doesn't really do either thing because they're between the two. I'm looking at the Leagues of Votan, which is the squats, which they call space dwarves or whatever now. They've changed the name of them to Leagues of Votan. And I'm looking at them thinking, they just look like chubby space marines. It's, or they don't actually look like cool. They've always trying to move the needle, do something different, and as a result, I'm looking at the whole lineup for 40k, and the coolest miniatures they do are for Necromunda, and I just wish that they did those miniatures for 40k. And like all the cool like Shadespire, they had some great miniatures there. Not Shadespire, sorry. Come on, but the space Blackstone Fortress. There's some really cool miniatures in that, and I just wish that those were the 40k miniatures. They seem so driven in certain aspects of it, and the variation, the risks they take, it's very vanilla now, and I'm not a big fan. I think that they need this next version to really hit home. Do many people play the Horus Heresy relaunch game around your way, or not really?
Not our way. We have, so, one of the things is one of the places I play is near a sub base. And so a lot of times we get servicemen coming in, and it just seems like 40K is the game for a lot of enlisted people because whatever base they end up going to, there's somewhere nearby they can play. And so that kind of dominates in that sphere. I will say, I hear your criticism. I will say the miniatures from Games Workshop are just far and away so much better to paint and assemble than really anything else that I'm putting together. But I hear what you're saying about they're not maybe taking as many risks, and I think that's what's so crazy about things like one-page rules is that I don't know how they get around like trademark infringement. I guess these are just like space lizards, but they're taking something that is very familiar, and a lot of people have played like lizard folks in a Warhammer setting, and they're taking a thing that looks familiar and they're adapting it in another cool way. I saw someone out there was making 3D printed Skaven sci-fi troops, and they have these like mono wheel motorcycle things that are on. I'm just like, whoa, like they're not bound by any lore or reason, the cult of cheese or whatever it was called. They can just kind of have fun or run with it.
Yeah.
It makes me really excited, and it makes me really worried about like where the future is heading for miniature companies. And maybe I just need to start thinking about Patreons as miniature companies because 10,000 people getting weekly files to print, like I guess that's probably is on scale with a bunch of other smaller war games. Maybe
I think so. If you look at the way that people buy games anyway, they go to their friendly local game store. Most do it out of a feeling of obligation because they know the people there and they want their businesses to do okay and not fail. They go in there, they basically have a reduced selection compared to what's on the internet. They buy it at a more considerable markup and sometimes basically have to pre-order it. And so it's it's a less effective version of Amazon where you actually have to travel to go and get the stuff anyway. So when you're looking at the way that game stores provide services to people, we were talking about this yesterday, and the reason that people used to go to game stores was for expertise. Is because the internet wasn't such a big thing, and so they could actually speak to other people who were highly knowledgeable, but buying behaviors changed and people self-select the kind of things that they want to have when they want to buy. So as a result of that, it's kind of decentralized that knowledge sharing process. And so game stores really represent the social interaction point. And for things like war games, it makes perfect sense. You've got great terrain, tables and stuff, but how do you monetize that? Do you go to the old model of expecting people to overpay for a product which takes up your shelves, or is there a better way that you could do that? And that's the challenge that folks are going to have with this type of stuff. Game stores are going to have it rough. If you look at board games, Kickstarter, people get it, they play at home, they play with their friends. It's great to be able to get a game, and rather than having to go to a game store, you could go to somewhere that does nice food and have it there, or go to a bar, play it there. That's great. So we're going to see things change, but I think with the Patreon 3D printing, it takes like a designer like someone like Rick Priestley to basically say, okay, these are the rule sets here. We're going to build a company around this, and as soon as anybody tackles this with a significant budget and use that as their primary distribution method, we're going to see things change very, very quickly. And a lot of other companies are going to pivot into this, but no one's done it yet because I think the technology in 3D printing is not quite there. It's too messy. It's not exactly healthy to 3D print stuff. Once that's tackled, the fidelity's there right now. You can get fantastic results. The medium itself may break quite easily. That's somewhat of a problem. But it's also the fact that you need other people to play with, and once those numbers start going up to a critical mass, that's the way that people are going to enjoy these things. In 10 years' time, people are going to print out anything they want, and they're just going to play with it. I think this is how game companies need to consider the future. And what they need to do is probably have something which is more similar to like a seasonal type of interaction where there's a reason to keep playing or subscribing. Like Dungeons and Dragons moves into that now, where you pay a subscription to use online resources and stuff. I think that's what we're going to see with miniature gaming to a degree, if they elect to go this route of having sort of like self-printed miniatures, or maybe miniature agnostic games.
Yeah, man, I don't know. It just feels like such a big change from what I'm used to. But even what you're saying about gaming spaces, I have a game store, my friendly local game store I love to go to. I love the people there. Sometimes I just go out there to like talk with the manager there because I think he's a cool dude. And just down the road, my local library has these game nights, and there's like 30 people that go to them.
Yeah.
And, I'm just having a blast with that too. And I was like, oh man, we could totally play war games at the library. The libraries in the United States are like ridiculous, at least where I live, are like ridiculously excited to be like helpful and be used as a space. And it's just like, oh my gosh, we could be having game nights, at a place like this that are doing war games as well. Like, I don't know. For some reason, that just like really made me stop and think and be like, what does the future look like? If people could get products easily delivered to their house or print them themselves, like, really anywhere. It's kind of like, charging electric vehicles, and you're like, well, there'll be no gas station someday. And it's like, well, then where will they charge? And it's like, well, wherever there's a spot they can charge. It's just hard for me to like wrap my mind around how this is going to change, because there's some places nearby where you go and you pay a fee to use a table. And it's like, I can go here and pay $5 at a table, and like, yeah, and it's like helping the establishment.
Yeah.
But like I said, like, or if there's a library that has a room they want to set aside for board game and gaming in, like, geez, like, some of these are pretty nice buildings.
If people wanted to do basically charge by the space, they might as well do like personal storage, like lockers and stuff, to make more money doing it.
Oh my gosh.
So, it's very weird. Obviously, people who have game stores do it because they're passionate about it, but I don't understand the future. I don't understand how they're going to continue doing it. Even the bigger sort of like franchise type game stores, it's challenging for them. A lot of companies say, hey, we make the money off Magic the Gathering, everything else is a bonus. That's how they make money in their stores. So,
right.
Yeah, I just don't know. I kind of feel for people who are in the industry. I'm sure there's a lot of intelligent people who've got some fantastic ideas, and I'm excited to see what happens. But I think that what we're seeing is consumer behavior now is decentralized. People are looking online to play. Tabletop Simulator probably replicates a tremendous number of iterations of games that people would normally play in person. So, the world's changing, and hopefully the hobbies and stuff can accommodate what we love, which is miniature wargaming with technology, and come up with something which is very compelling.
Yeah, I agree. So, I mean, I think the future is going to have a lot of adaptation, and I'm excited to see where it goes. And, 5 years of A Song of Ice and Fire, man, I'm excited to see, how this game continues to grow. I mean, I don't know. 10, what could be the 10th faction here? Like, do you think, at some point we need to have like a Brotherhood Without Banners thing, but like that wouldn't necessarily be a faction. I see that. So I'm wondering where things are going to head.
Yeah, I think the Brotherhood of Banners, I think that we've mentioned the Hill Tribes already, but obviously they'll be attached to Lannisters. I don't think they're going to pepper the neutrals with a whole bunch of other releases, because I think it becomes a bit too much of a catch-all for things.
Yeah.
But if I'm looking at another like solid overall faction, maybe that's what the next book dictates. We don't know. I think it'd be difficult to insert something like that in there, but I think we'll probably see more sub-faction play and iterations around sort of different areas within, like Free Folk, or within the Starks, as an example.
I know people are always asking for White Walkers, but I saw an article about George R. R. Martin. I guess there at one point was plans to do like a White Walkers TV show, and he had raised concerns about there maybe not being enough lore to really drive that.
Yeah.
And I just, me projecting here, but I could see that maybe being the same logic used about not putting it into the game yet. There's not enough, textual things to really make that work.
Yeah, like how exciting can a bunch of dead people be? It's not as if you got like the dead. You can't have like dead people X, dead people Y. It's like, well, they pretty much have a lot of things in common.
You're dead people. You're mostly dead people.
Yeah.
You're
Dead people with
some
swords,
semi-dead people.
dead people with hammers. Who all
they can all have hammers.
Exactly. But they all get together. So the dead people with hammers are all in the same unit.
Well, I'm pretty sure that the A Song of Ice and Fire miniatures game already has had its first dead character in it. I do believe, wasn't it the Night's Watch? Was it the Night's Watch recruiter? I can't remember exactly. But on the card art, he didn't have his hand finished.
Oh, really?
You know what I'm talking about?
No, I didn't see that.
Oh, gosh. I remember looking at the art so closely.
It's not so much you having him not having a hand. I think you've got too much time on your hands if you're looking at stuff
that
like
must be.
Anyway, what's popping on the table gaming? What are you working on at the moment?
Oh my gosh. So I'm in the calm before the storm here. So obviously there's the Song of Ice and Fire stuff always going on. Like I said, 30 releases this year. There's a lot of big stuff coming up still. But then we've also got the Master of the Universe Kickstarter, which is coming before the end of the year, and Marvel Zombies as well. Those are two games that I really want to play a lot of. And I'm trying to think of like what kind of cool content. Sometimes like when I'm thinking about it in a content perspective, I think of also like what would be games that are cool to make like graphics for and doing like 80s retro He-Man style graphics. That's cool.
Yep.
Superheroes, like all about that. So, kind of anxiously awaiting those Kickstarter fulfillments.
How long now for He-Man? When's that coming?
I might be speaking out of turn. I think it's like Q3, maybe. No, not Q3. I think it's going to be like October, November, December. And those things may all be pushed back. Like, I don't really know the shipping situation.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. And, I got a chance to just recently do a play along with Quackalope on his channel for the Dune War of Arrakis game, which I can't speak about, but I'm excited.
You can tell me all about that. Come on, surely.
Oh gosh. That'll be an upcoming thing. But I went in
friends,
there.
Chase. Come on,
I went in there. The War of the Rings game is what it's based on, that chassis. And I went in there thinking, this is just going to like a reskin, which is fine. Like, that's a great game. And I feel maybe bad saying this. I was skeptical, but they did the due diligence. They made it work. They really tied the theme in, and they spent a lot of time thinking about how to use that chassis, but make it something that is really Dune specific. And it's a great asymmetrical game. I'm kind of bummed that I enjoyed it so much because like I don't really need to put another big box on my shelf here. But it's a game that I think it's going to be one I'll play with my dedicated buddy. I know we'll play a bunch of it together, and that'll be like our thing.
Yeah.
Probably not one I bring to like a board game night at the library. But if you like the War of the Rings game, that mechanic, that style of game, the area control combat, like just check out the playthrough.
Okay, very cool. I'll certainly check it out.
And, I think maybe we'll wrap it up there. I think we had a good run of it here.
This is basically me and you talking like we do each week anyway. So I hope people at home enjoyed it. There was enough to keep people going, and probably not much in the way of content, but at least we had some fun along the way.
And we also put these podcasts up on YouTube. And if you have any opinions or thoughts about like the future of gaming, what do you think that the scene will look like in 10, 15 years? Like, drop a note. I'd be really interested to see what people's perspectives are on that. And, in the meantime, I hope you get your miniatures on the table.